Chicktar's claws shook as he pressed the communication button again. This was the 15th distress call. 15 times he had sent the same desperate message into space, hoping someone would answer, hoping someone would care. This is Creche 4 mining colony. We have 340 trapped underground. Many injured. Cubs, among them. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. His voice cracked on the last words. Through the window of the communications hub, he could see the massive crack in the ground where the mine entrance used to be. 6 hours ago, the planet had shaken like an angry beast. The tunnels collapsed. Most of the colony workers were underground when it happened. Now they were sealed in the dark, deep below the surface. Chicktar was Velkin, an insectoid species that had mined this world for 20 cycles. His kind were good at digging, at finding valuable minerals in hard places, but they were not strong enough to move the thousands of tons of rock that now blocked the tunnels. They needed help. They needed rescue equipment. They needed someone to care. The communication panel finally lit up. Chicktar's hearts jumped with hope. Someone had answered. Creche 4 colony, this is Galactic Council Station 7. We have received your distress call. Stand by. Please hurry, Chicktar said. We don't have much time. The air supply down there will only last maybe 2 days. Understood. Stand by. The line went silent. Chicktar waited. Minutes turned into an hour. Then 2 hours. Finally, the communication panel lit up again. Far away, in the great chamber where the Galactic Council met, several species were talking about Creche 4. Sareth, a tall reptilian delegate with cold yellow eyes, looked at the numbers on his data screen. The cost of rescue would be 4.2 million credits, he said, his voice emotionless. The economic value of the colony is only 1.7 million credits. The mathematics is very clear. We cannot justify this expense. A Torvian representative nodded, their feathered crest bobbing. My people's ships cannot handle that gravity anyway. Creche 4 is a Class 4 death world. The gravity would crush our vessels. The atmosphere is toxic, added an elegant airlon, their crystal-like skin shimmering. Our biology is not compatible. We would need special equipment we do not have. My corporation's insurance does not cover death world rescues, said the Dreshka delegate, a bear-like creature with gray fur. It is too expensive, too risky. Sareth looked around the chamber. Then, we are in agreement. The Creche 4 situation is regrettable, but unavoidable. We will evacuate the surface personnel. The trapped miners are, unfortunately, lost. We cannot save them. The vote was quick. Only 2 species voted against the decision. The rest agreed. It was too expensive, too difficult, too dangerous. The trapped Velkin would die, and the galaxy would move on. Back on Creche 4, Chicktar received the message. His legs nearly gave out from under him. He had to read it 3 times before he could accept what it said. Rescue deemed economically unfeasible. Evacuation of surface personnel authorized. Deep condolences for your losses. That was it. That was all. The galaxy had decided his people would die because saving them cost too much money. Chicktar walked slowly to where the other surface Velkin waited. They looked at him with hope in their multifaceted eyes. He couldn't speak. He just slowly moved his head side to side in the Velkin gesture of negative. One female, Peshka, made a clicking sound of distress. No one? No one will come? No one, Chicktar whispered. They had a small communication line to the trapped miners, a thin cable that went down through a crack in the rocks. He had to tell the trapped that no one was coming to save them. The hardest part was listening to the parents say goodbye to their cubs. The young ones didn't understand. They asked when they would see the sky again, when they would come home. The parents lied and said soon, very soon, even as they clicked in sorrow. Old Breshka was down there, a respected elder. His voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. We knew this was possible. Chiktar. We work dangerous jobs in dangerous places. Tell our story. Let the galaxy know we called for help, and no one came. I will, Chiktar promised. As the hours passed, the oxygen levels underground dropped. The trapped Velkin grew quiet, saving their strength. The cubs stopped asking questions. They huddled close to the adults, mandibles clicking softly in fear. Chiktar sat at his communication panel, knowing it was useless but unable to leave. He sent one more message. Not to the council. Not to any specific species. Just out into the void of space. To anyone listening, this is Chiktar of Creche 4. 340 of my people are trapped underground with failing air. We asked for help. The galaxy said no. They said it costs too much. They said the risk is too high. They said we are not worth saving. I don't know if anyone out there believes differently. I don't know if anyone cares. But if someone does, if anyone has the courage the council lacks, we are here. He ended the transmission and put his head in his claws. It was over. In another day, maybe less, his people would run out of air. They would die in the dark, alone, abandoned by the civilization they had served for generations. Then something on his sensor screen changed. Chiktar lifted his head, mandibles clicking in confusion. There were new contacts appearing. Ships. Coming fast. Very fast. Impossible, he whispered. The council said no one was coming. He watched as 6 signatures appeared, burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. They were coming straight for the colony. Coming fast enough that their hulls glowed from the heat. Chiktar's communication panel suddenly crackled to life with a new voice. A voice speaking in heavily accented galactic common, with strange sounds he'd never heard before. Creche 4 colony, this is the human vessel Incheon's Hammer. We picked up your distress call. We're here to get your people out. Where do you need us? Where do you need us? Chiktar stared at the panel. Humans? He had heard of them. A new species, barely part of the galactic community. From some death world far away. They had no reason to be here. No reason to care. Who? His voice broke. He tried again. Who are you? Why are you here? The response was simple, direct, and said with absolute certainty. We're humans. You called for help. That's all the reason we need. Now let's go save your people. For the first time in 6 hours, Chiktar felt something he thought was gone forever. Hope. The 6 human ships came down through the toxic atmosphere like they were racing each other. Chiktar watched them land near the collapsed mine entrance, their engines throwing up clouds of the yellow dust that covered everything on Creche 4. The largest ship touched down first, metal groaning as it settled under the crushing gravity. A ramp extended from the side of the lead vessel. The first human to emerge was wearing a thick suit that looked like it could survive anything. The helmet retracted, and Chiktar saw his first human face. She was female, with dark hair pulled back tight, and eyes that looked like they had seen difficult things, but refused to quit. I'm Commander Park Minju, she said, walking toward Chiktar. She moved well in the high gravity. Better than most species could. Show me where they're trapped. Chiktar led her to the collapsed entrance. What had been a wide tunnel was now just a wall of broken rock and twisted metal. Minju studied it carefully, her eyes moving across every detail. Behind her, more humans were already unloading equipment from their ships. How deep? She asked. 300 meters, Chiktar said. Maybe deeper. The seismic activity shifted everything. We can't be certain. A human male approached, older than Minju, with scars on his hands that spoke of long years of hard work. I'm Chief Engineer, Lee Sung-ho, he said. Let me see the geological scans. Chiktar brought up the data on a portable screen. Lee studied it, making small sounds that Chiktar couldn't interpret. Finally, the engineer looked up. The gravity's murder and the air will melt your lungs, Lee said with what sounded almost like humor. So, Basically, Tuesday. For us. Chiktar didn't understand the reference, but he understood the meaning. These humans came from a world like this. A death world. They were built for this. Another human joined them, a woman carrying medical equipment. "I'm Dr. Kim Hana," she said. "How many injured down there?" "We don't know exactly," Chiktar admitted. "At least 50. Maybe more. The communication line is very thin. Only voices can get through." Kim nodded and immediately began setting up a medical station. Chiktar watched in amazement as she unpacked equipment that looked designed for exactly this kind of situation. Heavy, durable, meant to work in terrible conditions. A shorter human approached, male, with a face that looked kind but determined. "Sergeant Kang Ji-woo. Rescue coordination," he said. "Do you have the communication line to the trapped?" "Yes. This way." Chiktar led him to the small shelter, where the thin cable disappeared into the rocks. Kang picked up the speaker. "Trapped miners, this is Sergeant Kang of the Human Rescue Team. Can you hear me?" There was a moment of silence. Then old Breshka's voice came through. Weak, but steady. "We hear you, human. But the council said no one was coming." "The council doesn't speak for us," Kang said firmly. "We're here now. We're going to dig you out. It's going to take time, but we're not leaving without you. All of you. Understand?" Another voice came through, younger, clicking with emotion. "You really came? For us?" "We really came," Kang confirmed. "Now listen carefully. We're going to drill down an air supply line first. Get you fresh oxygen. Then, we start the real digging. Stay calm, conserve your energy, and trust us. We've done this before." Chiktar felt his legs tremble. They had done this before. These humans rescued people from collapsed mines on death worlds, as a normal thing. Commander Minju gathered her team around a portable display, showing the geological data. Chiktar listened as they planned. 3 approach tunnels, Minju said. "We reinforce as we go with the nanocarbon mesh. Team 1 goes straight down. Fastest route, but most unstable. Team 2 comes in from the east side, slower but safer. Team 3 is our backup if either collapses. The aftershocks are still coming every few hours," Lee warned. "We could lose a tunnel anytime. Then we work fast and careful," Minju said. "Any questions?" No one spoke. These humans knew what to do. They had equipment, training, and most importantly, they had the will to do it. A new ship arrived, larger than the human vessels. It was Torvian, with diplomatic markings. A tall Torvian observer emerged, his feathered crest bright yellow against the dull landscape. "I am Observer Kreshik," he announced. "I am here to document this tragedy. For the council records." Minju looked at him with an expression Chiktar was learning to read as irritation. "You're here to watch people die?" "The council determined rescue was impossible," Kreshik said stiffly. "Then witness this," Minju said, turning back to her team. "Deploy the drilling rig. Let's get those people some air." The humans moved with impressive efficiency. Within 30 minutes, they had a drilling rig positioned and working. The drill bit into the rock. The sound loud even through the toxic atmosphere. Chiktar watched the depth meter climb. 50 meters. 100. 150. "Be careful," he warned. "The rock is very unstable. Everything worth doing is dangerous," Lee said, monitoring the drill's progress. "That's what makes it worth doing." At 280 meters, the drill broke through into open space. The humans quickly attached an air supply line and fed it down the hole. Through the communication speaker, they heard the trapped Velkin clicking in relief as fresh oxygen began flowing. "Air supply established," Kang reported. "That buys us time." "How much time?" Chiktar asked. "As much as we need," Minju said. "Now comes the hard part." The humans split into 3 teams. Each team had digging equipment, support structures, and more courage than Chiktar had seen from any species in his long life. They began cutting into the collapsed mine from 3 different angles. Team 1 was led by a young human named Private Yoon Se-jin. He had the calm confidence of someone who had worked underground before. Chiktar learned he had been a coal miner on Earth before joining the rescue service. Team 2 worked the east approach, led by a woman named Corporal Im Soo-jin. She sang while she worked, strange human songs that somehow made the work go faster. Team 3, the backup, was managed by Engineer Lee himself. He constantly monitored the stability, ready to shift resources wherever they were needed most. Observer Kreshik watched all of this with growing confusion. Finally, he approached Commander Min Ju. "I must ask," he said, "why are you doing this? These are not your people. You don't even know them. The risk is enormous, and you receive no payment. Your ships could be damaged. Your people could be hurt. Why?" Minju stopped what she was doing and looked directly at the Torvian. "You really don't understand?" "No," Kreshik admitted. "I do not." "They called for help," Minju said slowly, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "They need help, and we can give it. That's what people do. Or, what they should do. But the cost. What's the cost of doing nothing?" Minju interrupted. "What's the cost of being the kind of person who can hear someone dying and just walk away because it's expensive? We can't live with that cost. So, we're here." Kreshik had no response to that. Down below, through the communication line, the trapped Velkin were hearing all of this. Old Breshka's voice came through one more time. "Human Commander Minju, I have a question." "Go ahead," Minju said. "The Council abandoned us. They are the civilization we have served for generations. You are strangers, new to the galaxy. Why do you care more than they do?" "Whoa." Minju was quiet for a moment. Then she answered, "Maybe we're too new to know that credits matter more than lives. Maybe coming from a death world taught us different lessons. Or maybe we just remember what it's like to be the ones who need help. Whatever the reason, we're here." A massive aftershock suddenly hit. The ground shook hard enough to knock Chiktar off his feet. Alarms blared from all 3 tunnel teams. Our piece. Team 1's tunnel was collapsing. Private Yoon Se-jin heard the rumble before he felt it. Years working in Earth's deep coal mines had taught him to recognize that sound. The mountain was moving. "Back! Everyone back!" he shouted into his comm. His team scrambled backward through the tunnel they'd been digging for the past 4 hours. The support beams groaned. Dust and small rocks began falling from the ceiling. Then, larger rocks. Then everything came down. Yoon threw himself behind a support beam as tons of stone crashed down where he'd been standing seconds before. The tunnel, filled with dust so thick he couldn't see his hand in front of his helmet. His heart pounded as he waited for the shaking to stop. "Team 1, report." Commander Minju's voice came through the comm, sharp with concern. "We're okay," Yoon said, coughing. "But the tunnel's gone. Completely collapsed. We lost about 40 meters of progress. Pull back and regroup," Minju ordered. "Team 2, status?" "We're stable," Corporal Im Soo-jin reported. "The east tunnel held, still digging." "Team 3? Also stable," Engineer Lee confirmed. "But I'm seeing stress fractures forming in the rock layers around Team 2's position. They need to reinforce more before going deeper." Chiktar watched from the surface as the human teams emerged from the tunnels. They were covered in dust, some limping, but none were quitting. Yoon's team immediately began preparing to start a new approach tunnel. "You're going back in?" Chiktar asked, amazed. "After that collapse?" "Of course," Yoon said, checking his equipment. "Those people are still down there. The job's not done." Dr. Kim had set up her medical station in one of the human ships. She was treating minor injuries when the first rescued Velkin came up. Team 2 had broken through to a small side chamber where 15 Velkin had been trapped. These were the lucky ones. In a pocket with good airflow, the Velkin emerged blinking in the dim light, their legs shaking with exhaustion and fear. Kim immediately began checking them over. Her scanner adapted to read Velkin biology. "You're going to be okay," she said gently to an older Velkin male whose leg was clearly broken. "This is going to hurt. But I need to set this." She worked with surprising gentleness for someone wearing heavy gloves. Chiktar watched as she adapted human medical techniques to Velkin physiology. When normal medicines wouldn't work, she improvised. She used a welding torch at low setting to cauterize a bleeding wound when Velkin blood wouldn't clot with human coagulants. "Forgive me if I'm doing this wrong," Kim said as she worked. "I studied your species biology on the way here, but I've never actually treated a Velkin before." "You're saving my life," the injured Velkin said. "You're doing it perfectly. You're..." Among the rescued was a young cub named Tikrik. She was small, her chitin still soft with youth, and she was terrified. She clung to Sergeant Kang when he carried her out, her small claws gripping his suit. "It's okay," Kang said softly. "You're safe now. See? Fresh air. Open sky. You're going to be fine. You came for us." Tikrik clicked, her voice high and scared. "The big one said no one would come. But you came." "We came," Kang confirmed. "And we're getting everyone else out too, including your parents." "Where are they?" Kang. "Deeper," Tikrik said. "In the main chamber with the others." Kang looked at the tunnel entrance. The main chamber was still 200 meters of solid rock away, but he smiled at the young cub. "Then, that's where we're going next." Team 2 continued making progress through the east tunnel. Corporal Im was a natural leader, keeping her team focused and safe. She'd been a rescue worker in Seoul before joining the space program. She'd pulled people from collapsed buildings after earthquakes. This was harder, but the principle was the same. "Support beam here," she directed. "And another one there. We're not taking chances." They advanced meter by meter. The work was slow, careful, exhausting. The gravity made every movement harder. The toxic atmosphere meant they couldn't take off their suits even for a moment, but they didn't stop. Above ground, Observer Kreshik was sending regular reports back to the council. His messages grew increasingly confused as he watched the humans work. These beings operated in conditions that would kill most species. They worked through exhaustion and danger. And they did it for strangers. "They just saved 15 Velkin," he reported. "The humans are celebrating like they won a battle. They're going back in immediately to get the others. Commander Minju says they won't stop until everyone is out. I don't understand them." Late into the night cycle, Team 2 broke through to another chamber. This one was larger. 60 Velkin were inside, including many cubs. The oxygen was dangerously low. Some of the Velkin were barely conscious. "Medical team, now," Im called. "We need respirators and stretchers." Dr. Kim and her assistants rushed down the tunnel. They brought portable oxygen units and started treating the most critical cases right there in the chamber. Some Velkin were too weak to walk. The humans carried them out, one by one, through the narrow tunnel. It was brutal work. The humans were getting exhausted. Chiktar could see it in their movements, hear it in their breathing. But when he suggested they rest, Commander Minju shook her head. "We rest when everyone's out," she said firmly. "Not before." The breakthrough came 18 hours into the rescue. Team 3, working a different angle, suddenly broke through into the main chamber. The largest group of trapped Velkin was there, 180 individuals, including 47 cubs. This was where Tikrik's parents were. Old Breshka was in that chamber too. He was helping keep the cubs calm, telling them stories to distract them from their fear. When the human drill bit broke through the wall, he clicked in relief. "I knew you would come," he said to the first human face he saw. "I didn't believe it was possible, but I knew you would come." End quote. The evacuation of the main chamber was complicated. The tunnel Team 3 had made was narrow and unstable. They could only move a few Velkin at a time. Engineer Lee studied the geology scans and made a decision. We need to widen this tunnel, he said. But if we do, we risk another collapse. The support structure has to be perfect. How long? Minju asked. 4 hours to do it safely. The oxygen in that chamber won't last 4 hours. Lee looked at the numbers again. Then we do it in 2 hours and accept the risk. They widened the tunnel, working faster than was safe, installing supports as quickly as possible. Twice, human workers dove to stabilize the supports, risking their own lives to keep the tunnel open. Specialist Han Jun was positioning a support beam when a section of ceiling gave way. Tons of rock came down directly on him. His team saw him disappear under the debris. Han! Someone shouted. They dug frantically. Every second mattered. They found him buried under rocks that would have killed most beings. His suit had held, but he wasn't moving. Get him out, Im ordered. Carefully, they pulled him free. Dr. Kim ran up as they carried him out. She checked his vital signs while he was still covered in dust. Broken ribs, she said. Han opened his eyes. The tunnel? Stable, Im told him. Because of you. Good, Han said, then passed out. By the 20th hour, they were evacuating the last Velkin from the main chamber. The cubs came out first, carried by humans who were gentle despite their exhaustion. Tikrik's parents emerged, and she ran to them, clicking in joy. The reunion made every human who saw it smile despite their tiredness, but they weren't done yet. There were still 40 Velkin trapped in the deepest section, an area that had been completely sealed off by the initial collapse. This would be the hardest rescue of all. We're running out of time, Lee warned. The geological stress is building. This whole area could collapse completely in the next few hours. Then we work faster, Minju said. Commander, Lee said carefully. If we send people down there, and it collapses, we'll lose them too. Minju looked at her engineer. Are you saying we should abandon those 40? I'm saying it's dangerous. Everything we've done has been dangerous, Minju said. We knew that when we came. We're not stopping now. She called for volunteers to make the final rescue attempt. Every single human raised their hand. The final 40 Velkin came out 28 hours after the humans arrived. Corporal Im Soo-jin led the last team down, and she was the last one to emerge. The tunnel collapsed completely 5 minutes after she made it to the surface. The timing was terrifyingly close. All 340 Velkin were safe. Alive. The humans had done what the council said was impossible. Commander Park Min-ju stood in the dusty camp, watching her exhausted team. 3 humans were in the medical bay with injuries. Another dozen had minor wounds. Their equipment was damaged. Their ships needed repairs. It had cost them so much, and they were celebrating like they'd won the greatest victory in history. Chiktar approached Min-ju, his legs unsteady with emotion. You saved everyone. Every single one of us. I don't have words for what this means. Min-ju smiled, tired but genuine. You don't need words. Just live. That's thanks enough. But your equipment, your injured people, the cost, was worth it, Min-ju interrupted. Every credit, every risk, every moment. Because everyone is alive. Observer Kreshik was finishing his report to the council. His message was very different from what he expected to write. He didn't document a tragedy. He documented a miracle. And he documented his own shame. 3 days later, Commander Park Min-ju received a formal summons from the Galactic Council. She was to appear before them immediately to answer questions about the Creche 4 rescue. The message was carefully worded, but the threat was clear. The humans had violated Council protocols. Min-ju arrived at Council Station wearing her dress uniform. She walked into the great chamber with her head high. Around the curved walls sat representatives from 47 species. Most looked uncomfortable. Some looked angry. Sarith, the reptilian delegate who had voted against the rescue, spoke first. Commander Park Min-ju, you are here to answer for your actions at Creche 4. You violated established protocols. You entered a designated loss zone without authorization. You conducted a rescue operation after the council determined such action was economically unfeasible. I did, Min-ju agreed. You acted without council approval. I did. You understand you've broken numerous regulations? I understand you have regulations that say it's okay to let children die because the math doesn't work in your favor. Min-ju said calmly. Yes, I understand. The chamber erupted in angry clicking, growling, and other sounds of displeasure. Sarith raised his hand for silence. You cannot simply do whatever you wish, he said coldly. There are reasons for these protocols. Resources are limited. Risks must be calculated. Not every situation can be resolved with brute force and emotional thinking. You're right, Min-ju said. Not every situation can be resolved that way. But Creche 4 could. And it was. 340 beings are alive, because we tried. How many would be alive if we followed your protocols? That is not the point. That's exactly the point, Min-ju interrupted. You wrote off 340 lives, including 87 children, because the cost was too high. You made a mathematical decision about who deserves to live and who doesn't. A Dreshka delegate stood. You speak as if resources are infinite. They are not. We must make difficult choices. Then make them, Min-ju said. But don't pretend your choices are anything other than what they are. You chose credits over lives. We chose differently. Sarith brought up a display showing the cost of the human rescue operation. You spent 6.3 million credits on this operation. You lost valuable equipment. 3 of your people were injured. For a colony that was, economically speaking, already a loss. This is not rational. You keep using that word, Min-ju said. Rational. Economic. Mathematical. As if the only things that matter are things you can count on a balance sheet. We come from a world that tried that approach for a long time. We learned it doesn't work. Because the most important things can't be measured in credits. Sentiment, Sarith dismissed. Emotion. These are not bases for policy. Neither is cruelty, Min-ju replied. But that's what your policy is. Calculated, rational, cruelty. The chamber doors opened. Chiktar entered, followed by a full delegation of Velkin. Behind them came the cubs, including young Tikrik. Old Breshka was there too, walking slowly but with dignity. We were not summoned, Chiktar said clearly. But we came anyway. Because we have something to say. Sarith looked irritated. This is not proper procedure. Neither is abandoning people to die, Chiktar interrupted. But you did it anyway. You voted to let us suffocate in the dark. You said our lives weren't worth the cost of saving them. You, who we have served for 300 cycles. You, who took our resources and our labor. You, who claimed to represent civilization. He gestured to Min-ju. This human, this stranger from a species we barely knew existed, came when you would not. These humans risked their lives, spent their resources, worked until they could barely stand. For us. For strangers. And you want to punish them for it? Old Breshka stepped forward. I am 340 cycles old. I have seen much in my long life. I believed the council represented the best of civilization. I was wrong. He looked directly at Sarith. These humans, newcomers to the galaxy, primitives from a death world, showed us what civilization truly means. It means helping those who need help. It means caring for strangers. It means not everything has a price tag. Young Tikrik moved to stand beside Commander Min-ju. The tiny cub looked up at the council with her many eyes. I'm 7 cycles old, she said, her voice high but clear. I don't understand economics or protocols. But I understand that I called for help, and no one came. Except the humans. They came. They saved me and my parents and everyone. Why are you angry at them for that? Ah, the simple question hung in the air. No one had an immediate answer. A young Erlon delegate named Thressis suddenly stood. Her crystal skin was flushed dark with emotion. I voted against the rescue, she said, her voice shaking. I looked at the numbers and agreed it wasn't economically justified. I watched the footage of the rescue. I watched humans work until they collapsed. I watched them carry cubs out gently, even though they were exhausted. I watched them celebrate when everyone was safe, like it was the greatest moment of their lives. She paused. I am ashamed. Deeply, permanently ashamed. Other delegates shifted uncomfortably. Thressis continued. We tell ourselves we're rational, that we make hard choices that emotional beings can't make. But what if we're just making excuses? What if we've built a civilization that can calculate the price of everything, but understand the value of nothing? That's enough. Sareth snapped. This is becoming emotional theater. Everything important is emotional. Thressis shot back. Love is emotional. Courage is emotional. Compassion is emotional. And yes, shame is emotional. I feel all of these things right now. Especially shame. The Torvian observer Kreshik stood. I watched the entire rescue. I was sent to document a tragedy. Instead, I documented something I have never seen before. I documented beings who would risk everything for strangers. Not for profit, not for politics, just because it was right. He looked around the chamber. We have forgotten what that means. If we ever knew. The debate continued for hours. Species argued back and forth. Some defended the council's decision as necessary pragmatism. Others questioned what kind of civilization they had built. Finally, Sareth called for order. The council must vote on sanctions against humanity for these violations. The vote was close. In the end, the council decided on a formal warning. Humanity was told not to interfere in council decisions again. They were told to respect protocols and procedures. They were told their emotional approach to problems was not appropriate for galactic civilization. Commander Minju stood to receive the judgment. We hear your warning. We understand your position, but understand ours. We will not stop helping people who need help. We will not calculate whether someone deserves to be saved. We will not let children die because the economics don't work. If that means we don't fit in your civilization, then maybe your civilization needs to change. She turned and walked out, the Velkan delegation following her. 3 months later, another distress call went out. A Torvian colony was in crisis, reactor meltdown. Evacuation impossible. The council gathered to debate. They debated for 6 hours. Talked about costs and risks and protocols. Argued about what was feasible and what was not. While they debated, a human rescue fleet was already moving. They had intercepted the distress call. They were coming. The thunder was spreading across the stars. Begzar Station was dying. The fusion reactor that powered the Torvian colony had developed a critical fault. Radiation was leaking into the habitat sections. 3,000 Torvians were trapped with no way to evacuate. Their ships couldn't handle the radiation levels needed to approach the failing reactor. The distress call reached the Galactic Council. Governor Krexith of Bexar Station waited for their response with fading hope. He had been one of the delegates who voted against the Kresh 4 rescue. He remembered arguing that it was too expensive, too risky. Now he was the one waiting for help. The council debated. The discussion was familiar. Cost analysis. Risk assessment. Feasibility studies. The math didn't look good. Saving Bexar Station would be extremely expensive. The radiation levels made it incredibly dangerous. Then something unexpected happened. A new voice joined the council channel. This is Chiktar of the Velkan Collective. We have ships en route to Bexar Station. We will attempt to assist. Sarith clicked in surprise. The Velkin? You don't have the technology for radiation work. You don't have death world biology. This is beyond your capabilities. Perhaps, Chiktar agreed. But we must try. The humans taught us that much. The Velkin weren't alone. A small Airlon medical ship launched, led by Thresis. Even a few Dreshka volunteers joined, their mining equipment modified for rescue work. They arrived at Bexar Station within hours. Governor Crexith watched the approaching ships with mixed feelings. Hope, because someone had come. Doubt, because these species weren't equipped for this kind of crisis. Shame, because he remembered voting to abandon these very beings when they needed help. The Velkin ship docked first. Chiktar emerged in a radiation suit that looked makeshift and inadequate. He approached the reactor problem with determination, but quickly realized the truth. They weren't ready for this. Their equipment wasn't strong enough. Their biology couldn't handle the radiation levels. They were trying, but they were failing. Thresis and her Airlon team set up a medical station, but struggled to help the radiation-sick Torvians. Their medicine wasn't designed for this. Their training didn't cover it. They were doing their best, but their best wasn't enough. The Dreshka volunteers tried to shore up the failing radiation shields around the reactor. Their mining expertise helped, but the reactor was deteriorating faster than they could work. They were brave, but bravery alone couldn't solve this. Crexith watched these species struggle and sacrifice for his people. Species he had dismissed. Species he had voted to abandon. Now they were here, risking their lives, even though they couldn't succeed. Why? He asked Chiktar. Why come when you know you cannot save us? Because you called for help, Chiktar said simply. Because the humans showed us that trying matters. Even if we fail, at least we tried. At least we cared. At least we came. Then new signatures appeared on the sensors. 6 human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The lead vessel was familiar. The Incheon's hammer. Commander Park Min-ju had come again. The human ships approached Bexar Station. Min-ju's voice came over the communication channel. Heard you folks could use some help. 5. Crexith felt tears in his eyes. You came. After I voted against helping your friends. After I said your people were too emotional. Too reckless. You still came. 1. That's what we do, Min-ju said. Now let's save your people. We don't have much time, but this time was different. The humans didn't work alone. Commander Min-ju coordinated with Chiktar, with Thresis, with the Dreshka volunteers. They combined their efforts. Chief Engineer Lee Sung-ho gathered the Dreshka workers. Your mining knowledge is exactly what we need. You understand how to work in dangerous conditions with heavy equipment. Work with my team. We'll combine human radiation shielding with your structural expertise. Dr. Kim Hana brought Thresis into the medical bay. Your species processes certain chemicals differently than we do. That could be useful. Let's share our medical databases. Maybe together we can find treatments that work better. The Velkin, with their smaller size, could access maintenance tunnels that humans couldn't easily reach. Chiktar's people went into those narrow spaces with human-provided radiation protection, carrying repair equipment to fix damaged systems. It was messy. It was improvised. But it was working. Private Yoon Se-jin worked alongside a Dreshka named Crusade, manually installing radiation panels while the reactor pulsed with dangerous energy. They communicated through translators. But the work created its own language. When a panel slipped, Crusade caught it. When Crusade's equipment failed, Yoon shared his. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim and Thresis developed a hybrid treatment protocol, Airlon medicine combined with human technique. They saved Torvians, who would have died with either approach alone. Young Tikrik was there too. The Velkin cub had insisted on coming. To help. Like the humans had helped her. She was too small for the dangerous work, but she moved through the station bringing water and supplies to the exhausted rescue workers. Her presence reminded everyone why they were there. The work took 18 brutal hours. The reactor was stabilized. The radiation was contained. All 3,000 Torvians were saved. In the aftermath, Governor Crusade stood before the assembled rescue workers. Humans, Velkin, Erlon, Dreshka. Species that 3 months ago would never have worked together like this. I don't deserve this, Crusade said quietly. I voted to let your people die, Chiktar. I called the humans reckless. I said emotion had no place in policy. I was wrong. Completely, terribly wrong. Chiktar approached him. The humans taught me something. It's not about deserving. It's about being people. People help people. Or they should. Commander Minju smiled. Chiktar's a good student. Better than me. I might have held a grudge. You came anyway, Crusade said. Why? Because you needed help, Minju said. And because if I didn't come, I'd be the same as the council that abandoned the Velkin. I'd be someone who lets people die because I'm angry, or because the math is wrong, or because of 1,000 other excuses. I don't want to be that person. Back at the council station, everything was changing. The successful rescue of Begzar Station had been watched by the entire galaxy. The images of different species working together, of humans teaching others their methods, of successful rescue where the council had predicted only death. A proposal reached the council floor. The Humanitarian Response Coalition. A volunteer rescue force that any species could join. Humans would provide initial training and equipment, but it would be open to all. The debate was intense. Sarith argued against it. This is chaos. This is emotion over logic. This is abandoning centuries of careful economic planning. But his voice was becoming isolated. More and more species were questioning the old ways. Thresis spoke for the proposal. We've built a civilization that's very good at calculating costs. But we forgot to calculate the cost of our own souls, the cost of being the people who can hear someone dying and just walk away. That cost is too high. I won't pay it anymore. Even some Torvian delegates, including observers from Begzar Station, spoke in favor. These humans risked their lives for us after we abandoned their allies. They taught other species to do the same. If that's reckless emotion, then logic has failed us. The vote came. It wasn't unanimous, but it passed. The Humanitarian Response Coalition was approved. 1 year later, the coalition had conducted 17 rescue operations. Humans still led many missions, but they weren't alone anymore. Velkin rescue workers served alongside humans. Erlon medical teams deployed to crisis zones. Dreshka engineers shared their expertise. Even a few Torvian ships had joined. On Creche 4, the recovered colony held a ceremony. A monument was being unveiled in the central plaza. It showed figures representing different species working together. Human and Velkin, side by side. The inscription was in multiple languages. When everyone walked away, some ran forward. Commander Park Minju attended the ceremony. She was older now, with more gray in her hair. She trained the next generation of rescue workers, teaching humans and aliens alike. Young Tikrik wasn't so young anymore. She stood beside the monument, now a trainee in the rescue service herself. She wore a uniform that combined Velkin design with human practicality. A group of human students approached, fresh recruits learning the rescue trade. One asked Minju the question everyone always asked. Commander, why did you go to Creche 4? The council said, no. Your own government hadn't authorized it. Why risk everything? Close. Minju looked at the monument, at Tikrik, at the mixed species crowd gathered to honor those who came when no one else would. Because someone called for help? She said simply. Because everyone else said it was too hard, too expensive, too impossible. Because if we didn't go, who would? And if not, then when? She smiled. The galaxy said certain things were impossible. They were wrong. They just needed to learn what humans have always known. What's that? The young student asked. That the only impossible rescue is the one you don't attempt? Minju said. That people matter more than math. That courage is more valuable than credits. That helping someone who needs it isn't reckless emotion. It's the most rational thing in the universe. Her communication device chirped. A distress call from the Kepler sector. Station failure. 2,000 beings at risk. The council was debating. Minju looked at her team. Humans, Velkin, Erlon, even a few Torvians and Dreshka. A rainbow of species, united by a simple idea. Help those who need it. Well, she said. You ready? They were ready. They were always ready. The ships launched together. A fleet of different designs and different species. But one purpose. Racing towards someone who needed help. Not because it was profitable. Not because it was easy. Not because someone authorized it. Because that's what people do. The thunder that had descended on Creche 4 had spread across the galaxy. It echoed in rescue operations, on 100 worlds. It rang out in the voices of species who'd learned that compassion wasn't weakness. It rolled like a storm through the halls of power, challenging old certainties. They had thought no one would come. They had been right about the galaxy as it was, but the galaxy was changing. Humanity had arrived, and humanity had brought something the galaxy had forgotten. The thunder of compassion moving at the speed of light. The thunder of stubbornness that refused to accept death as inevitable. The thunder of simple truth. You called for help, and help is coming. From Earth to Creche 4, from Bexar Station to 1,000 crisis zones across the stars, the thunder rolled, and wherever it went, it left the same message carved into monuments. Written in the hearts of the saved. Taught to every new generation. When everyone says no, someone must say yes. When everyone walks away, someone must run forward. When everyone gives up, someone must try harder. That someone was humanity. And humanity taught others to be that someone too. The galaxy would never be the same.
Colonel Williams visited her late that night. You should rest, he said. I cannot. Maria told him what Velmara had shared. Williams was quiet for a long moment. We always wondered why humans survived on Earth when so many species went extinct. Stronger animals died out, faster ones disappeared, but humans kept going. We were not the best at anything specific, but we were good enough at everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. Maria quoted the old saying, but better than a master of one, Williams finished. That is the rest of that quote. People always forget the second part. He put a hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow, Earth is proud of you. You have shown the galaxy that humanity belongs here, that we are worth being noticed. I just hope I can show them how to survive, Maria replied. Dawn came to Vraxis Prime with warning sirens. The scourge had been detected on long-range sensors closer than expected. The station went to alert status. Ships began evacuating non-essential personnel, though it was clearly too late to save everyone. In the Colosseum, a smaller crowd gathered. Many had fled or were preparing to flee, but some stayed to watch the final trial. Perhaps they hoped that seeing a warrior face a simulated scourge would help them understand how to fight the real one. Maria entered the arena alone. The other candidates had been eliminated. It was just her now, one human against the simulation of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The adjudicator appeared, its glow dim with worry. Candidate Santos, this is the final trial. You will face a Class 3 Scourge entity, simulated from historical combat data. Survive for 10 minutes and you win. Defeat it and you achieve perfect victory. There is no shame in... Alarms blared across the station. Emergency lights flashed red. A voice boomed through every speaker in every language. This is not a drill. The Void Scourge has breached the outer hull. All personnel proceed to evacuation stations. This is not a drill. The Colosseum erupted in panic. People ran for the exits. Ships could be heard launching from the docking bays. Through the observation windows, Maria could see explosions blooming against the station's shields. Archon Velmara's voice cut through the chaos, speaking directly to the arena. Sergeant Santos, the trial is suspended. Proceed to evacuation immediately. Maria looked up at the observation deck where Velmara stood. Then she looked at the arena floor where the simulation equipment waited, inactive. She made a decision. "No," Maria said into her communicator. "Activate the simulation." "What?" "Sergeant, we must evacuate. If the scourge is here, then we need to learn how to fight it right now, not later. The simulation might teach us something. Activate it." Velmara was silent for only a moment. Then she spoke to the technicians. "Do it. Activate the simulation." The arena floor opened. Darkness emerged, and within that darkness something moved. The simulated scourge entity rose from below, and even though Maria knew it was not real, every instinct screamed at her to run. It looked like living shadow mixed with wrongness. Its shape constantly shifted, flowing between forms that should not exist in three-dimensional space. Eyes opened and closed across its surface. Mouths formed and spoke in languages that hurt to hear. Maria raised her rifle and fired. The bullets passed through the entity as if it were not there. It had already adapted, making itself intangible. She threw a grenade. The explosion should have destroyed it. Instead, the entity absorbed the energy and grew slightly larger. It attacked, a tendril of darkness lashing out. Maria barely dodged. Where the tendril touched the ground, the metal floor corroded instantly. She tried her knife. It cut through the entity, but the wound closed immediately. Biological weapon? It adapted. Fire? The entity simply flowed around it. Electricity. It absorbed and redirected it back at her. Every attack Maria tried, the scourge adapted to within seconds. This was what Velmara had meant. You could not fight it with any single method. You had to keep changing. Maria dropped her rifle and pulled out her medical scanner. She used it to analyze the entity's energy signature, then recalibrated it to emit a disruptive frequency. The entity recoiled. For 3 seconds. Then it adapted and the frequency no longer bothered it. Maria switched tactics. She used chemicals from her medical pack to create a flashbang effect. The entity was stunned. For 2 seconds. She was running out of tools. Running out of ideas. The entity had adapted to everything she tried. It was learning her patterns, predicting her actions. She needed to stop being predictable. Maria started doing things that made no tactical sense. She sang loudly while dodging. She threw her empty medical pack at it, then immediately threw dirt, then fired her sidearm at the ceiling to rain debris down on it. She screamed insults in 3 languages. She did a cartwheel. The entity hesitated, confused by the chaotic behavior. It had adapted to every weapon, every tactic, but it could not adapt to absolute randomness. Maria kept changing. She used her combat knife as a hammer. She used her belt as a whip. She broke pieces off the arena floor and threw them. She used her own blood from a cut on her arm to mark symbols on the ground that meant nothing but looked intentional. She pretended to use abilities she did not have, making the entity waste time adapting to threats that did not exist. She was fighting like humanity had always fought, with creativity and desperation, with whatever was at hand, with no fixed strategy. The 10-minute timer reached 0. Maria had survived, but she did not stop, because outside the arena, the real scourge was tearing through Vrax's prime and her people needed to see how to fight it. She kept changing, kept adapting, kept being unpredictable, and slowly, impossibly, the simulated entity began to weaken. It had adapted to so many different attacks that it had lost coherence. It could not be intangible and solid at the same time. It could not absorb energy and be vulnerable to physical damage simultaneously. It had become everything, and in becoming everything, it had become unstable. Maria saw the opening. She used the last trick she had left. Something so simple the entity would never expect it. She stopped moving, stood perfectly still, and waited. The entity attacked, all its adapted forms at once, a mass of contradictory abilities striking together, and it tore itself apart from the inside. The simulation ended. The entity dissolved. Silence filled the Colosseum. Then Velmara's voice filled with wonder. She defeated it. The human defeated it. Through the speakers came the sounds of fighting throughout the station. The real scourge was here, and now, thanks to Maria, the galaxy had seen how to fight it. Not with strength, not with technology, with constant, chaotic, impossible to predict change. Maria sat in her quarters staring at the wall. Tomorrow would be the final trial. She had made it further than anyone expected, further than she had expected herself. But now came the real test. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. The door opened and an unexpected visitor entered. Archon Velmara, the ancient council member, moved slowly into the room. Her gray skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Behind her came a younger assistant carrying a data pad. "Sergeant Santos," Velmara said, her voice gentle despite her authority. "I hope I am not disturbing you." Maria stood quickly. "Of course not, Archon. Please sit." Velmara lowered herself into a chair with the care of someone whose bones had grown tired over centuries. "I came to speak with you before the final trial. There are things you should know, things the Council has kept secret for too long." The assistant activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air between them. Ancient texts, battle reports, scientific data. The Sentinel scanner was not created just to choose warriors for political trials, Velmara began. "That was how we used it, yes, but it was not its true purpose. The precursors built it to find something specific, a trait they called infinite adaptation potential." Maria looked at the swirling symbols in the hologram. "I do not understand. Let me explain by showing you something." Velmara gestured and the hologram changed. It showed a battle from thousands of years ago. A species Maria did not recognize fought against the Void Scourge. They used massive energy weapons, the kind that could destroy planets. The Scourge entities absorbed the energy and grew stronger. The hologram shifted to another battle. A different species used biological warfare, engineered viruses designed to destroy at the molecular level. The Scourge adapted and became immune within hours. Another battle. Advanced technology that could manipulate time itself. The Scourge learned to exist outside normal time flow. Do you see the pattern? Velmara asked. Every time we fought the Scourge with a specific strategy, it adapted. It learned. It became immune to that method of attack. The more specialized and powerful the weapon, the faster it adapted. Maria felt cold understanding wash over her. So using our best weapons makes it stronger. Exactly, Velmara nodded. The only times the Scourge was successfully driven back were by species who could adapt faster than it could. Species who never used the same tactic twice. Species who could fight with anything and everything. The hologram showed a strange insect-like species fighting the Scourge with what looked like primitive tools, but they changed tools constantly. Rocks became spears, became fire, became traps, became poison. The Scourge tried to adapt but could not keep up with the constant changes. These were the Ketari, Velmara said quietly. They are extinct now, but they held off the Scourge for 3 years. Not because they were powerful, because they refused to fight the same way twice. Another hologram showed a different species, barely humanoid, fighting with no pattern at all. They used technology, then abandoned it for physical combat, then switched to psychological warfare, then environmental manipulation. Complete chaos, the Vryn Collective. They survived 5 Scourge incursions before their star went supernova. They had no single military doctrine. Every warrior fought completely differently. Velmara leaned forward, her ancient eyes fixed on Maria. The scanner is not looking for the strongest species. It is looking for the most adaptable. The species that can change what it is at a moment's notice. The species with no fixed nature. Maria thought about the trials, about how she had won each one by refusing to fight the way others expected, by using tools in ways they were not designed for, by becoming unpredictable. Humans, Velmara said, evolved on a world with extreme environmental variations. You had to adapt to survive. You are generalists in a galaxy of specialists. Every other species has evolved for a specific niche. Kryn for strength, Nexians for computation, the Shadewalkers for stealth. But humans? You have no special ability except the ability to learn any ability. The assistant spoke for the first time. Our analysis of human history shows constant adaptation. You invented tools, then discarded them for better ones. You developed thousands of different cultures, languages, fighting styles. You never settled into one way of being. That is why the scanner chose you, Velmara said. Not because you are strong. Because you are everything and nothing at the same time. You can be whatever you need to be. Maria absorbed this information. It made sense in a way that was both encouraging and terrifying. The final trial. What will it be? Velmara's expression turned grave. You will face a simulated Scourge entity, a small one created from historical data. It will be the most dangerous thing you have ever encountered. How do I fight it? That is the question every species asks, Velmara replied. And every species that asks it the same way fails. There is no how. There is no strategy that works. You simply fight, and when it adapts, you change. And when it adapts to that, you change again, Faster and faster until either you win or you cannot change anymore. She stood to leave, her assistant helping her up. At the door, she paused. Sergeant Santos, one more thing. Our sensors detected the scourge entering the outer system 3 hours ago. It is moving faster than our projections suggested. It will reach Vraxis Prime sometime tomorrow. Maria felt her blood run cold. During the trial? Possibly before it. The Council is debating evacuation, but there are 5 million beings on this station. We cannot evacuate them all in time. Velmara looked at Maria with something like hope in her ancient eyes. If the scanner is right about you, about humanity, then perhaps you can show us how to fight what is coming. Not in a simulation, but in reality. After Velmara left, Maria could not sleep. She paced her small quarters, thinking about everything she had learned. About adaptation and change. About being unpredictable. About having no fixed nature. The third trial began the next day. They were given 12 hours to rest and prepare. Maria spent most of that time studying her medical pack, taking inventory of supplies. She had used some during the maze, treating minor cuts and checking herself for injuries. Lieutenant Chen visited her in her quarters. You are doing well, he said. Better than anyone expected. I am barely keeping up, Maria replied honestly. Vale and the hive mind are ahead of me in points. One mistake and I am eliminated. You have not made mistakes. You have made adjustments. Chen sat down across from her. That is what we do, right? Humans adapt. We might not be the fastest or the strongest, but we figure things out. Maria smiled slightly. I hope the next trial rewards figuring things out. The third trial was called the Pit of Endurance. They were taken to a hostile environment chamber, a massive enclosed space with its own artificial atmosphere. The adjudicator explained the rules. You will survive here for 72 hours. You have only what you carry. The environment is hostile. Water is contaminated. Food sources are scarce. Predatory creatures hunt these grounds. Those who survive the full duration advance. Those who fail to endure are eliminated. They were released into the chamber one by one, spread across different starting locations. Maria found herself in a rocky area with thin, toxic atmosphere. Her suit's sensors showed high radiation levels and temperature extremes. At night it would drop below freezing. During the day it would be hot enough to cause heat stroke. She watched the holographic countdown. 72 hours, 3 days. The other candidates had advantages. The hive mind's drones could enter sleep mode and conserve energy. Kratos could enter a form of suspended animation, barely using resources. The Nexian had built-in recycling systems. Maria was just human. She needed water, food, sleep, and protection from the environment. Her suit could filter air, but it had limited battery life. Her rations would last maybe 48 hours if she was careful. She found shelter in a cave formation and took stock of her situation. This was bad. The physically superior species would have major advantages here. Their bodies were more efficient, more resilient. But then Maria remembered her training. Humans had evolved on Earth, a planet with wildly varying environments, deserts and tundras, jungles and mountains. Humanity had spread across their entire world by learning to survive anywhere. Her species had invented endurance hunting. Ancient humans would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Not because humans were faster, because humans could keep going longer. Humans were persistence predators. Maria rationed her supplies carefully. She found water seepage in the cave and used her medical scanner to test it, mostly safe after filtration through her suit's emergency system. She found insects that her scanner identified as non-toxic. Not pleasant to eat, but protein was protein. When predatory creatures came near, she did not fight them. She scared them away with fire, made from chemical reactions in her medical pack. She used her suit's limited power only when absolutely necessary, manually regulating her temperature instead. The first night was brutal. She was cold, hungry, and uncomfortable. The second day was worse. She was exhausted and sore, but she kept going. Through the holographic displays, viewers watched the candidates. The Cytherian drones started failing on the second day. Their energy reserves depleted faster than expected. The hive mind was eliminated. A Draconid warrior named Skarzeth, who had been performing well, suffered an injury when a predator attacked. He survived but had to use so much energy in the fight that he could not maintain his body temperature. He withdrew on day 3. Maria just kept surviving. She treated her own minor injuries. She found food sources others missed. She conserved energy with ruthless efficiency. When the 72 hours finally ended, she emerged exhausted but alive. Only 4 candidates remained: Maria, Krathos, Shadewalker Vale, and Torval the Nexian. The galaxy was beginning to understand something. The human was not winning through superiority. She was winning through something else, through refusing to quit, through making do with less, through adapting to whatever the trial threw at her. In the viewing stands, Archon Velmara watched with ancient eyes that had seen thousands of candidates over her lifetime. She turned to her aide. "Send a message to the deep space sensors. I want constant updates on the Scourge's position." "You think it is coming soon?" the aide asked. "I think the scanner knows something we do not," Velmara replied. "And I think we are about to find out what." The 4th trial was announced that evening. The adjudicator's voice carried across the Colosseum. "Warriors, you have proven your strength, your cunning, and your endurance. Now you will face your greatest opponent, yourself." Holographic projections activated in the arena. 4 figures appeared, each one an exact copy of the remaining candidates. The hologram of Maria even held a replica of her medical pack. "The mirror match," the adjudicator explained. "You will fight a copy of yourself with identical abilities and knowledge. How do you defeat an opponent who knows everything you know? Who fights exactly as you fight? Who has no weakness that you do not also possess?" Maria stared at her holographic double. The copy stared back, and Maria could see the same uncertainty in its eyes that she felt in her own chest. Krathos went first. He fought his mirror with savage intensity. They were perfectly matched, identical in strength and skill. The battle lasted 20 minutes before ending in a draw. Neither could defeat the other. Krathos was eliminated. The mighty warlord, who had never lost a battle, walked from the arena with his head high. As he passed Maria, he stopped. "Fight well, human. The scanner chose you for a reason. Trust that." Torval the Nexian fought next. His mirror match ended similarly. 2 identical tactical computers could not outthink each other. They predicted each other's every move. Another draw. Another elimination. Shadewalker Vale approached its mirror. The 2 beings circled each other in perfect synchronization. Then Vale did something unexpected. It stopped fighting. It sat down and began meditating. Its mirror did the same. They sat in silence for an hour before the adjudicator declared it a draw. Vale was eliminated. As the shadow being left, it paused by Maria. "To defeat yourself, you must become something other than yourself," it whispered. "Perhaps you understand this better than we do." Then it was Maria's turn. She faced her holographic double in the center of the arena. The copy raised its rifle. Maria raised hers. They moved in perfect synchronization because they were the same person with the same training and the same instincts. Maria fired. Her copy fired. They both dodged the same direction. Identical. This was impossible. How did you fight yourself? Every tactic she knew, her mirror knew. Every strategy, every reaction, every thought process. They were the same. Unless she became different. Maria lowered her weapon. Her copy did the same, mirroring her action. Then Maria did something she had never done in training, never practiced, something completely foreign to her usual tactics. She started laughing. Her mirror hesitated, confused. Maria charged forward, abandoning proper combat form, moving erratically and unpredictably. She threw her medical pack at the hologram's face. She kicked dirt. She screamed random words. She acted nothing like a trained soldier. The mirror tried to predict her actions but could not. Maria was deliberately being chaotic, abandoning everything she had learned, fighting in a way that made no tactical sense. When her mirror tried to respond logically, Maria tackled it. They rolled across the ground. Maria was fighting like a child in a playground brawl, all wild emotion and zero technique. Her mirror, programmed to fight like Maria normally fought, could not adapt to this absolute abandonment of discipline. Maria got her knife against the hologram's throat. The copy flickered and disappeared. Trial complete. The arena was silent. Then applause erupted from the human delegation. Others joined in slowly, stunned by what they had witnessed. The adjudicator's voice boomed out. "Candidate Santos advances. The final trial will commence tomorrow." Maria stood alone in the center of the arena, breathing hard, her uniform covered in dirt. She had defeated herself by becoming someone else, by refusing to be predictable, by being impossible to understand. And deep in space, the void scourge crossed into the outer reaches of the galaxy, its arrival no longer weeks away but hours. The viewing platforms were packed with spectators as the second trial began. Word had spread throughout Vraxis Prime about the human who defeated the combat automatons without actually fighting them. Some called it cleverness, others called it cheating. But the rules had never said the automatons had to be defeated in a specific way. Maria stood with the remaining candidates in the preparation area. 8 had started. All 8 had passed the first trial, though she had taken the longest time. The others had won through pure combat ability. She had won through improvisation. Shadewalker Vale drifted closer to her. It was difficult to look at directly. Its form seemed to shift and blur, like smoke trying to hold a shape. When it spoke, its voice sounded like whispers layered on top of whispers. "You fight strangely, human." Maria was not sure if that was an insult or an observation. "I fight with what I have. What you have is less than everyone here." The Shadewalker tilted its head in a way that seemed almost curious. "Yet you advance, interesting." Before Maria could respond, the adjudicator appeared. "Warriors, the second trial will test your ability to navigate danger and survive hostile environments. You will enter the maze of shadows. Reach the center before time expires. The maze contains traps and hostile entities. Some of you will not emerge." The entrance to the maze opened, a dark doorway in the arena wall. It looked like a mouth waiting to swallow them. "You will enter one at a time," the adjudicator continued. "Your time begins when you cross the threshold. Fastest completion advances with the highest score. Failure to reach the center results in elimination." They drew lots for order. Shadewalker Vale went first, naturally. The being seemed excited if Maria was reading its body language correctly. A maze of shadows was its perfect environment. It disappeared into the darkness, and holographic displays showed its progress to the watching crowd. Vale moved through the maze like water flowing downhill. It phased through walls when needed, slipped past traps, and avoided hostile creatures by becoming intangible. It reached the center in 8 minutes. Next went a Nexian warrior named Torval, more machine than organic now. He used advanced sensors to map the maze and calculate the optimal path. 12 minutes, Krathos simply smashed through obstacles. The maze's traps barely slowed him down. His armored body shrugged off attacks that would have killed others. 14 minutes, but only because he took the most direct path, which was not the fastest. The hive mind split its drones into search parties, mapping every passage simultaneously. When one found the correct path, they all converged on it. 11 minutes. Then it was Maria's turn. She stepped into the maze and darkness swallowed her immediately. Emergency lights provided bare minimum visibility. The walls were close, oppressive. She could hear things moving in the shadows ahead. Maria took a breath and started forward. She had no ability to phase through walls like Vale. No advanced sensors like the Nexians. No armor like Krathos. She had her eyes, her ears, and her training. Medical training taught you to read signs. A patient's symptoms told a story if you knew how to listen. Temperature, pulse, breathing, skin color all provided information. The body always told you what was wrong if you paid attention. An environment could tell a story too. Maria moved carefully, watching everything. She noticed that air pressure changed near traps. The breeze shifted direction at intersections. Temperature variations indicated which passages led toward the maze's center, which was warmer due to concentrated power sources. When she encountered her first hostile entity, a mechanical creature that lunged from the shadows, she reacted on instinct. Her combat knife found the joint in its neck plating, not because she was a great fighter, but because she knew anatomy. Even machines had vulnerable points, places where critical systems were exposed. She read the maze like a diagnosis. This passage had stale air leading to a dead end. This intersection showed foot traffic patterns in the dust indicating the correct path. The walls here were warmer, meaning she was getting close to the center's power core. Twice she nearly triggered traps. Once she avoided a hostile entity by finding a side passage it could not fit through. She was slower than the others, more cautious, but she kept moving forward. When she finally reached the center, sweaty and breathing hard, the timer showed 19 minutes. She had placed third. Not great, but enough to advance. She emerged from the maze to find the other candidates waiting. Some looked at her with new respect. Others still seemed dismissive. She had survived, but barely. "Adequate," Krathos rumbled. His deep voice carried no emotion. "You are weaker than the others, but you compensate with observation." "Thank you," Maria said. unsure if he meant it as a compliment. The arena floor opened, revealing a massive pit below. You will face waves of combat automatons. Defeat them to advance. Fail, and you are eliminated. One by one, they were called forward. Maria watched as the others fought. They were incredible. Kratos tore through automatons with pure strength, his claws rending metal like paper. Shadewalker Vale phased through attacks and struck from impossible angles. The hive mind's drones moved like a swarm of metal insects, overwhelming everything. Then they called her name. Maria descended into the pit. The walls rose up around her, trapping her inside. 50 automatons activated, their eyes glowing red. They were humanoid in shape, made of reinforced alloy, armed with energy weapons. They attacked. Maria fired her rifle. The bullets bounced off their armor. She might as well have been throwing stones. An automaton raised its weapon to fire at her. She dove behind cover, her heart pounding. This was impossible. She could not fight these things with her equipment. She was going to fail in the first trial. There had to be a way. She looked at her medical scanner. It was designed to interface with alien biologies, to read and understand different species' systems. But systems were systems. Biology, technology, they all had patterns. Maria activated the scanner and pointed it at the automatons. Data flooded her display. Network protocols. Targeting systems. They were all linked together, sharing information. A network could be hacked. One of the automatons lay damaged where Kratos had fought before her. Maria ran to it, sliding under energy fire. She pulled open its chest panel and connected her medical scanner to its core processor. The scanner was not meant for this, but Maria had spent years learning how to make medical equipment do things it was not designed for. Field medicine required improvisation. She found the network connection, found the command protocols, and sent a single, simple instruction to all 50 automatons. Target hostiles. Then she changed the definition of hostile to include each other. The automatons turned on one another. They fired, struck, destroyed. Within 90 seconds, all 50 lay in smoking ruins. Silence filled the arena. Then the adjudicator's voice boomed out. Trial complete, candidate Santos advances. Above, in the viewing stands, the galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. The human had not won through strength. She had won through thinking. And somewhere in dark space, the Void Scourge drew closer. The council chamber was chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted at each other across the circular room. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of angry words in dozens of languages. At the center, Maria stood alone on a raised platform, feeling very small. This is an insult. The Kryn ambassador slammed his claws on his podium. My people have won the trials 5 times. Our warriors are legendary. How can the scanner choose a human over Commander Zethrock? The scanner has chosen, the elderly council member said firmly. Her name was Archon Velmara, and she had served on the council for 200 years. In 10,000 years it has never been wrong. Then perhaps 10,000 years is long enough for it to break. A Nexian representative's mechanical voice cut through the noise. Humans are barely capable of interstellar travel. They have no significant military victories. Their bodies are weak. This must be a malfunction. Maria wanted to argue, to defend her species, but Colonel Williams had told her to stay silent unless directly addressed. She watched the argument spiral around her, feeling like a stone that had been thrown into a calm pond. A voice like singing crystals spoke up. It belonged to Representative Shardek of the Shardborn. I propose we test the scanner. Bring other candidates. See if it accepts them now that it has chosen the human. An excellent suggestion. Archon Velmara agreed. Bring forward more candidates. For the next hour, warriors approached the scanner again. The result was always the same. Red symbols. Rejection. The scanner would not accept anyone else. It had made its choice. Finally, Archon Velmara raised her hand for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. The scanner's choice is clear. However, I understand your concerns. Before we proceed, I believe we must share certain information that has been kept secret. She touched a control on her podium. Holographic images appeared in the air above the chamber. They showed darkness dotted with stars. Then something moved in that darkness. Something huge and wrong. It looked like living shadow. Shapes that hurt to look at. Forms that did not make sense in 3-dimensional space. The Void Scourge, Velmara said quietly. This is why the precursors built the scanner. This is the real purpose of the trials. Maria felt cold fear run down her spine. She had heard stories about the Void Scourge, but most humans thought they were legends. Velmara continued. Every 1,000 years, the Scourge emerges from dark space and attacks our galaxy. The precursors created the trials to find warriors who could face it. The scanner does not measure strength or speed. It measures something else. Something they called adaptive lethality and survival imperative. The hologram changed, showing ancient battles. Species Maria did not recognize fighting against the shadow creatures. Some used massive weapons. Others used advanced technology. All of them failed. The Scourge adapted to every attack, learning and evolving faster than the defenders could respond. Only 3 times in recorded history has the Scourge been successfully driven back, Velmara said. Each time it was by species who could adapt faster than the Scourge itself. Species who could change their tactics mid-battle. Species who could survive anything. She looked directly at Maria. The scanner is not looking for the strongest warrior. It is looking for the species most likely to survive. And it has chosen humanity. The chamber was silent now. Everyone stared at Maria with new eyes. Not with contempt, but with something more unsettling. Fear, hope, calculation. There is more, Velmara said. Our long-range sensors detected unusual activity at the edge of the galaxy 3 months ago. We believe the Scourge is returning early. Perhaps in weeks rather than decades. The silence broke. Everyone spoke at once, their voices high with panic. Maria finally spoke, her voice cutting through the noise. When do the trials begin? The chamber went quiet again. Velmara looked at her with what might have been approval. Tomorrow at dawn. There will be 5 trials. Each tests a different aspect of combat capability. You will face the finest warriors from 8 other species. They have trained their entire lives for this. Understood, Maria said, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. After the council session ended, Maria was taken to preparation chambers deep within Vraxis Prime. The human delegation met her there. Colonel Williams looked worried. Lieutenant Chen and the others tried to hide their concern, but Maria could see it in their eyes. You do not have to do this, Williams said. We could lodge a formal protest. Claim the scanner made an error. And then what? Maria asked. War breaks out while they figure out what to do? The Scourge arrives and no one is prepared? She shook her head. The scanner chose me. I have to trust there was a reason. You are a medic, Chen said. You are trained to save lives, not fight battles. Maybe that is exactly what it is looking for. Maria tried to sound more confident than she felt. They gave her access to files about her opponents. She spent the night studying them, and each one made her feel smaller. Warlord Krathos of the Kryn Empire, 9 feet tall armored exoskeleton, master of overwhelming force. He had conquered 12 planets and never lost a battle. Shadewalker Vale of the Umbral Collective, a being who could phase through solid matter, becoming intangible at will. It could strike from shadows and disappear before anyone could respond. Hivemind Unit 7743 of the Cytherian Swarm. Not one being, but 50 combat drones sharing a single consciousness. They could attack from all directions at once, coordinating perfectly. 5 others, each terrifying in their own way. Each one a legend among their people. Maria was a medic from Earth who had joined the Defense Corps to help people. She had seen combat, yes, but always from a support position. She patched up wounded soldiers. She stabilized the dying. She ran toward danger to save lives, not to take them. How was she supposed to compete against these beings? She barely slept that night. When dawn came to Vraxis Prime, simulated sunrise flooding the station with artificial light, she felt exhausted before the trials even began. They brought her to an armory. You may choose any weapons and equipment you wish, the armory master told her. He was a small being with too many eyes, each one examining her critically. Maria looked at the walls covered in exotic weapons, plasma rifles, molecular blades, gravity hammers, energy shields. She did not know how to use most of them. Instead, she took her standard assault rifle, her sidearm, her medical pack with its scanners and emergency supplies, and a combat knife practical and simple. The armory master blinked all his eyes in sequence. That is all? That is all, Maria confirmed. He made a note on his datapad. She could guess what he was writing. The human is going to die quickly. They led her to the first trial arena. The other 8 candidates were already there. Each one looked at her with different expressions. Some showed contempt, others showed curiosity. Warlord Krathos simply stared at her with his reptilian eyes unreadable. The adjudicator appeared, floating above them all. Its glow was strong now, fully recovered. Warriors, you stand at the threshold of legend. 5 trials await you. Only the worthy will advance. Only the strongest will survive. The first trial tests your power in direct combat. The grand Colosseum of Vraxis Prime floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of metal and light. Ships from 1,000 worlds surrounded it, each carrying representatives who came to witness history. Inside the massive structure, beings from across the galaxy filled the seats. They spoke in hundreds of languages, their voices creating a sound like rolling thunder. Commander Zethrock stood before the Sentinel scanner. His scales gleamed under the bright lights. He was 9 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel. For 300 years he had trained for this moment. His species, the Kryn, had won the trials 5 times before. Everyone expected him to be chosen. The scanner was a pillar of black metal that reached toward the ceiling. No one knew exactly how old it was. The precursors had built it thousands of years ago before they disappeared from the galaxy. Strange symbols glowed on its surface, pulsing with blue light. The device had never failed. It always found the worthy. Zethrock placed his clawed hand on the scanner's surface. The symbols changed color, cycling through the spectrum. Then they turned red. A deep sound echoed through the chamber like a bell announcing bad news. Rejected. The crowd gasped. Zethrock stepped back, confusion on his reptilian face. This had never happened before. The Kryn delegation whispered among themselves, their voices sharp with concern. The adjudicator, a floating being made of pure energy, spoke in a voice that everyone could understand regardless of their language. Next candidate, please approach. A warrior from the Arachnus Collective came forward. She had 8 limbs and a body covered in natural armor. Her neural combat net could process battle information faster than any computer. She touched the scanner, red symbols. The rejection sound, one by one they came forward. The Shardborn sent their champion, a being made of living crystal who could reshape matter with thought alone. Rejected. The Nexians presented their finest soldier, half organic and half machine, enhanced with technology that cost more than a planet. Rejected. After the 20th rejection, panic began to spread through the Colosseum. The adjudicator's glow flickered with uncertainty. In the viewing boxes high above, members of the Galactic Council stood and argued with each other. Their voices carried down to the arena floor. The scanner has malfunctioned. Impossible! It was built by the precursors. Then explain why it rejects everyone. An elderly council member, her skin gray with age, raised her hand for silence. If the scanner rejects all candidates, the trials cannot proceed. Without the trials, the Treaty of Vraxis becomes void. Do you all understand what that means? The crowd went quiet. Everyone understood. For 10,000 years, the trials had kept peace between the species. They settled disputes without war. They determined who would control valuable resources and territory. Without the trials, old conflicts would return. Blood would be spilled across the galaxy. In the back section of the Colosseum, far from the expensive seats, the human delegation sat quietly. There were only 12 of them. Humans were new to galactic society. They had achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive, weak, and strange. Sergeant Maria Santos sat with her teammates from Earth's Unified Defense Corps. She was 32 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her uniform was simple compared to the ornate armor and weapons carried by other species warriors. She was a combat medic, trained to save lives rather than take them. This is bad, Lieutenant Chen whispered beside her. If the trials fail, there will be war. Earth is right in the middle of 3 different territorial disputes. Maria nodded. She had studied the political situation during the long journey to Vraxis Prime. Humanity's solar system sat at the intersection of 3 major powers' claimed territories. Only the trials kept those powers from fighting over it. Below, more candidates approached the scanner. All were rejected. Some were rejected so quickly that the scanner's symbols barely had time to cycle through their colors. The greatest warriors in the galaxy, beings who had conquered planets and commanded fleets, all heard the same sound of rejection. After 2 hours, every species had presented at least 1 candidate. None had been accepted. The adjudicator's glow had dimmed to almost nothing. This session will adjourn while the council determines the appropriate course of action. The crowd began to disperse, but slowly. No one wanted to leave. Everyone knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. possibly catastrophic. Maria watched as the various delegations gathered in worried clusters. Some were already shouting at each other, old grudges surfacing quickly. The Kryn and the Nexians looked ready to fight right there in the Colosseum. "Someone should try," Maria said quietly. "What?" Lieutenant Chen looked at her. "Someone should try the scanner. All of us. Every species should send every person they brought. Maybe the scanner is looking for something specific that we haven't seen yet. The Council didn't ask for that. The Council is too busy arguing about protocols." Maria stood up. "Permission to approach the scanner, sir?" Her commanding officer, Colonel Williams, studied her face. He was an older man with gray at his temples and the careful eyes of someone who had seen too much combat. "You really want to do this? You're not even our primary combatant." "That's exactly why I should try. Everyone else has sent their strongest warriors." Maybe that's the problem. Maria surprised herself with her own words. She did not know why she felt so strongly about this, but something pulled at her, a sense that she needed to step forward. Colonel Williams was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Go ahead, Sergeant. Can't make things any worse." Maria walked down the steps toward the arena floor. She was aware of eyes following her. Humans were shorter than most species here. Her uniform had no impressive decorations. She carried only a standard sidearm and her medical pack. She looked completely ordinary. The adjudicator noticed her approaching. Its glow brightened slightly. "The session has been adjourned." "I know," Maria said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "But the scanner is still active. And my species hasn't presented a candidate yet." Murmurs ran through the remaining crowd. Some species laughed. Others looked insulted that a human would even try after their own champions had failed. "Humans?" someone said loudly. "They barely have space travel. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities." Maria ignored the voices. She walked to the scanner and stood before it. The pillar of black metal towered over her. Up close, she could see that the symbols on its surface were incredibly complex, patterns within patterns that hurt to look at for too long. She took a breath and placed her hand on the surface. It was cold, colder than ice, but it did not freeze her skin. The symbols began to change color. Maria expected red. She expected rejection. She had volunteered simply because someone needed to try, and her species would look weak if they did not even attempt it. The symbols cycled through blue, green, yellow. They moved faster than they had for any other candidate. Faster and faster until the colors blurred together into white light. The scanner began to hum, a sound that started low and built until it filled the entire Colosseum. Then the pillar blazed with golden light so bright that people covered their eyes. The adjudicator's voice boomed with power it had not shown before. "Accepted. The Sentinel has chosen. Candidate Maria Santos of Earth, species human, you are recognized as worthy." The Colosseum exploded with noise. Shock, disbelief, and outrage filled the air in equal measure. Maria stood frozen, her hand still on the scanner, unable to process what had just happened. In 10,000 years, the Sentinel scanner had never been wrong, and it had just chosen a human. The Colosseum shook as explosions tore through distant sections of Raxus Prime. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. People who had stayed to watch the trial now scrambled for escape routes, but the docking bays were overwhelmed. Ships launched as fast as they could, but 5 million beings could not evacuate in minutes. Maria stood in the arena, breathing hard, staring at where the simulated scourge entity had dissolved. Her mind raced. She had defeated a simulation, but outside these walls the real thing was killing people. Archon Velmara's voice came through the emergency channels, broadcasting to the entire station. "All combat personnel, all security forces, all able-bodied individuals who can fight, listen carefully. You have just witnessed Sergeant Maria Santos of Earth defeat a scourge entity. Study what she did. She changed tactics constantly. She used everything as a weapon. She was unpredictable. This is how we must fight. Adapt, change, survive," Maria's communicator crackled. Colonel Williams spoke urgently. "Maria, we need you. Security Station 7 has been breached. Scourge entities are coming through. The defenders there are getting slaughtered. They are fighting like they were trained, and it is not working." "On my way," Maria replied. She grabbed her rifle, checked her remaining ammunition, and ran for the exit. The corridors of Raxus Prime were chaos. People fled in panic. Some were injured, dragged along by friends. Others simply ran, abandoning everything. Maria pushed through the crowd. moving against the tide of evacuation. She passed a viewport and stopped for just a moment. Outside in the void of space she could see them. The Void Scourge entities. They looked like tears in reality itself. Wounds in the fabric of space. Dozens of them attached to the station's hull, tearing through metal and shields like paper. They were beautiful and terrible at once. And they were death incarnate. Maria kept running. She reached Security Station 7 to find absolute disaster. The station's defenders, a mix of species and security forces, were pinned down behind barricades. 3 Scourge entities moved through the corridor beyond, their forms shifting and flowing. The defenders fired energy weapons. The entities absorbed the energy. They fired kinetic rounds. The entities became intangible. They threw grenades. The entities redirected the explosions back at them. A Kryn security officer lay dying, his armor shredded. Maria slid to his side, checking his wounds. Fatal. She could not save him. He looked at her with fading eyes. It adapts to everything. We cannot hurt it. Yes, you can, Maria said firmly. But you have to stop fighting like soldiers. Fight like you are improvising. Use anything. Change constantly. She stood and shouted to the defenders. Listen to me. Stop using tactics! Stop being predictable. Grab anything and use it. When it adapts, switch to something else immediately. A Nexian defender shouted back. That makes no sense. We need coordinated fire, proper formation, and that is why you are losing. Maria interrupted. It adapts to coordination. Be chaos, be random, she demonstrated. She fired her rifle at the nearest entity. It phased to intangibility. She immediately dropped the rifle and grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall, spraying chemical foam. The entity solidified to resist the chemical and became vulnerable. A defender's kinetic round hit it before it could adapt again. The entity recoiled, wounded. See? Maria yelled. Keep changing. The defenders began to understand. A Draconid grabbed a maintenance tool and threw it. A Nexian hacked into the lighting system and started flashing lights randomly. An Arachnus used her natural webbing to create obstacles, then immediately switched to electrical discharge. The Scourge entities tried to adapt, but every time they did, the defenders had already switched to something else. The fight became chaotic, disorganized, effective. One entity fell, its form destabilizing. Then another. The third one retreated, flowing back through the breach it had entered from. The defenders stared in shock. They had won. It was messy, undisciplined, and completely contrary to their training, but they had won. Spread the word, Maria told them. Tell every defender on the station. Change tactics constantly. Use anything as a weapon. Be unpredictable. She moved to the next breach, then the next. At each location, she found defenders fighting the way they had been trained and losing. She taught them what she had learned. Be chaos, be change. Be impossible to predict. Word spread through the station's communication channels. Defenders started adapting. A Shardborn engineer realized he could reshape the station's structure itself, creating obstacles that changed every few seconds. A group of Cytherian drones abandoned their hive mind coordination and started acting independently, each using different tactics. At Breach Point 12, Maria found Warlord Krathos fighting alongside a mixed unit of defenders. The mighty Kryn warrior was using tactics Maria had never seen before. He would start with his claws, switch to a beam weapon, then grab debris and throw it, then suddenly charge with pure physical force. The human way of fighting, Krathos called out when he saw her. It feels wrong, undisciplined, but it works. Keep at it, Maria replied, helping to barricade the breach. You are doing great. Shadewalker Vale appeared from the shadows, its form flickering. I have been observing. The Scourge cannot maintain adaptations to more than 7 or 8 different attack types simultaneously. If we exceed that threshold with rapid changes, it destabilizes. Spread that information, Maria said. 8 different attacks in quick succession. That is the key. More defenders arrived, including Torval the Nexian. His mechanical voice carried new determination. I have analyzed the pattern. We need coordination, but not predictable coordination. Random teams using random tactics in random order. They organized a defense that was organized chaos. Teams would form, attack with multiple different methods, then dissolve and reform with different members using different tactics. No pattern for the Scourge to learn, no strategy to adapt to. The tide of battle began to turn. Slowly the Scourge entities were pushed back, but there were so many of them, and the station's defenders were exhausted. People were dying. Sections of the station were being sealed off as life support failed. Maria worked for hours, moving from breach to breach, teaching defenders, treating wounded, organizing chaotic defense strategies. She was exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. Her medical supplies were gone. Her weapons were empty. She was fighting with improvised tools in pure desperation. At breach point 23, a massive scourge entity broke through. It was larger than the others, more complex. It must have been adapting as it came through the station, learning from all the battles before it. It was ready for the chaos tactics. It shifted through defensive forms faster than the defenders could change attacks. Maria watched defenders fall. This entity had learned too much. It was countering everything they tried. An idea formed. If the entity had learned from all the previous battles, it expected chaos. It expected rapid changes. It expected unpredictability. So Maria did the opposite. She walked directly toward the entity. No weapon, no tool. Just walking, steady and predictable. The entity paused, confused. This was not the pattern. Where was the chaos? Where were the rapid changes? Maria kept walking. Slowly. Steadily. Predictably. The entity attacked with a tendril of darkness. Maria did not dodge. She let it hit her, but at the last moment she grabbed it. Her hands closed around the essence of the scourge itself. It felt like holding frozen fire, like touching the void between stars. Pain shot through her arms, but she held on. And she did not let go. The entity tried to adapt, tried to phase intangible, but Maria held on, tried to burn her. She held on, tried to freeze her. She held on, because humans were endurance hunters. Humans were the species that simply refused to let go. Other defenders saw what she was doing. They attacked the entity from all sides while it was focused on Maria. 8 different attacks, 10, 12. More than it could adapt to while also trying to free itself from Maria's grip. The entity destabilized, broke apart, dissolved. Maria collapsed. Her hands were burned and frozen at the same time. Medics rushed to her, aliens using their own medical knowledge to stabilize her. Someone gave her water. Someone else wrapped her hands. Archon Velmara's voice came through the station-wide communication. The scourge is retreating. They are pulling back from the station. We have held. Vraxis Prime survives. Cheers erupted through the corridors. People who had been fighting for their lives suddenly embraced each other. Species that had been enemies for centuries hugged and celebrated together. They had survived. Maria was taken to medical bay. Her injuries were serious but not life-threatening. As she lay in the recovery bed, leaders from across the galaxy came to see her. Representatives from species she had never met. Warriors she had fought beside. Council members who had doubted her. Warlord Krythos bowed his head to her, a gesture of deep respect among his people. You taught us to fight without honor, without discipline, without pride. You taught us to survive. My people owe you a debt. Shadewalker Vale drifted beside her bed. You showed us that adaptability is the ultimate strength, that having no fixed nature is the greatest advantage. Humans understand this instinctively. It is why the scanner chose you. Torval's mechanical voice was softer than before. I have logged everything that happened today in my memory banks. Future generations will study these battles. They will learn the human way of war. Constant change. Infinite adaptation. Over the next days, as Vraxis Prime repaired itself, the Galactic Council convened. They granted humanity full membership with unanimous vote. Earth was given a permanent seat on the War Council, recognition that humanity had something to teach the galaxy about survival. Maria was promoted and given formal recognition as champion of the trials. But more than that, she was given a new role. She would travel the galaxy, teaching military forces how to fight the way humans fought, how to adapt, how to change, how to survive. A week later, she stood before the Sentinel scanner one final time. Archon Velmara stood beside her. The scanner knew, the ancient being said quietly. Somehow it knew that humanity possessed exactly what we needed. Not strength or speed or technology, but the ability to be anything, to use anything, to adapt to anything. Maria placed her hand on the scanner. The symbols glowed warmly, a confirmation and approval. My species is not special, she said. We are just survivors. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us 1,000 different ways, so we learned 1,000 different ways to survive. That, Velmara replied, is exactly what makes you special. Every other species specialized in one survival strategy. Humans specialized in specializing. You are the generalists in a galaxy of specialists. And when facing something that adapts to everything, the generalist who can do everything becomes the specialist you need. Maria looked at the scanner, this ancient device that had recognized something in humanity that humanity itself had not fully understood. What happens when the scourge returns? It will come back eventually. When it does, we will be ready, because you taught us how to fight it. More than that, you taught us how to think about fighting, not as a ritual, not as a doctrine, but as constant adaptation. Humans will help lead that defense. Maria thought about Earth, about humanity, about all the ways her species had survived against impossible odds, by making tools, by changing cultures, by adapting to every environment, by refusing to have just one answer to any problem. We will be ready, Maria said. Humanity did not come this far by being the strongest or the fastest. We came this far by being too stubborn to die and too creative to quit. The scourge can adapt to any weapon, but can it adapt to a species that refuses to be predictable? Can it adapt to people who will fight with rocks one moment and quantum physics the next? She smiled, tired but determined. It chose humanity because we are the species that evolution forgot to give a final form. We are the species that is still changing. And that is exactly what you need against something that learns from patterns. Velmara nodded slowly. The scanner rejected all combatants. Then a human stepped forward and changed everything. Outside the Colosseum, ships from Earth arrived carrying soldiers and scientists, teachers and engineers. Humanity had been invited to join the galactic community as equals. They came not as conquerors but as survivors, not as the strongest species but as the most adaptable. In the depths of space, the Void Scourge retreated to dark places between the stars. It had learned something today. It had encountered a species it could not predict, a species that fought without patterns, without fixed tactics, without any single answer. When it returned, it would face a galaxy that had learned to fight like humans, to adapt, to change, to survive. Maria looked out at the stars and thought about all the species out there, all the different ways of living and thinking and being. Humanity was just one species among billions. But humanity had something to offer. Not dominance, not superiority, just survival. Pure, stubborn, creative, adaptable survival. The trials were over. The real work was beginning. And humanity was ready to show the galaxy what it meant to refuse to die, no matter what the universe threw at you, to face every challenge by becoming whatever you needed to be, to survive not by being the best at any one thing but by being good enough at everything. That was the human way. And now it would be the galactic way too, because the scanner had chosen. And the scanner was never wrong.